we're going to see in the Gemara now. Good morning. Who's that on this? That's David, Mr. Safdie.
I'm sorry, my train got delayed. Sorry, guys. I'll
No
just follow
problem.
you on the phone.
No problem. Good to have you on the phone until you come.
Thank you.
Good morning, Jaime.
Morning.
Morning. We're on Zayin Amud Aleph 7a. The art scroll at 7a1. The top of the page. We have about 4 lines left to finish, and that will complete the parak. The Gemara says, Ilav Tuvia. These people, you see, the Gemara until now, we're talking about laws of, we're talking about witnesses. You know, we spoke about how you have to hear from the witnesses. You have to hear directly. You're supposed to hear directly from the witnesses. You're not supposed to hear from a miturgaman. Not supposed to hear from a interpreter. And some say this following, and we had a story in front of Rava last week, where Rava appointed a interpreter, and the Gemara says he understood what the witnesses were saying, except he needed an interpreter to tell them, but he didn't speak the language, he understood the language. That was what the Gemara said last week, a story with Rava. And some understand that today's story, the beginning of 7a, is also another story that came in front of Rava. So what happened? So Ilav Tuvia. These are 2 witnesses. They testified on a loan, and they testified that Reuven, let's say Reuven, let's say, lent money to Shimon. They testified that there was a loan, and based on the testimony of the witnesses, that's what established. Usually, if there's no document that's signed by witnesses, or if there's no IOU, so then we have witnesses that come and they say they saw the loan. So these were the names of the witnesses. Ilav Tuvia. Good morning, Yosef. So they came to court.
Boker Tov, Rabbi.
Boker Tov. And Karivei the Arvahavi. These were related to the guarantor. So since they were related to the guarantor, we had a loan. There was a guarantor on the loan. And the question was, can you accept the testimony of witnesses when they were related to the guarantor? They were not related to the lender or the borrower. So meaning to say, if they were related to the lender of the borrower, then it would be obvious that they can't go ahead and be witnesses on this loan. But they were not related to the lender of the borrower. So they were related to the Krivei de Arva of the guarantor. Savar Rav Papa L'Remeima, Rav Papa thought to say that Gabe Lovo Malva Rechikinino. These witnesses, they're considered distant from the borrower and the lender. They're not related to the borrower and the lender. So we should be able to trust them as witnesses on the deal, because they're coming to testify about the loan, and they're coming to testify that Reuven lent Shimon money. They're not related to Reuven and Shimon, and therefore the rabbi, Rav Papa, thought to say that this is we could trust them as witnesses. But Amalei Rav Huna b'Rei Rav Yeshua Rav Papa. However, Rav Huna, the son of Yeshua, said to Rav Papa, you cannot use these people as witnesses. That if they're related to the guarantor, we consider that a close relationship here, and that you cannot use witnesses who are related to the guarantor. Why not? Because it's obvious. If the borrower does not have money to pay, lav bata arvazo malva, isn't the lender going to go after the guarantor? Since the lender is going to go after the guarantor, so therefore they're connected. The relatives are connected to the witnesses are connected to this case, and since they're related to the guarantor, you cannot accept. Morning, Michael. You cannot accept their testimony. So the idea of witnesses that are related the same way, if they would be related to the borrower, you can't accept their testimony. If they're related to the lender, you can't accept the testimony. So too, if they're related to the guarantor, you also cannot accept the testimony, even though here they're coming to say that the guy owes the money. But they're not, but still, they're still too connected here by a lot, by blood, by relation. And therefore, they can't go ahead and doesn't always have to be connected by blood. You could be a brother-in-law, is also a not a kosher witness. So that's what the Gemara concludes. First of all, mazel tov to everybody. That concludes the first parak, because the next piece my son did with everybody, the next piece. So now we're going to start the second parak of Masechtas Makkos. Rabbi David Feinstein, every time he would finish a parak, he would always either make a siyum on a parak. They did not just make a siyum on a Masechta. On a parak, he made a siyum. He wanted to share that with everybody. Now, it's interesting that the Masechta, there's 3 chapters to this Masechta, Makkos, and each chapter is like its own focus. The first chapter focused on Edom Zomamim, focused on witnesses that, good morning, Akiva, witnesses that frame somebody and the laws regarding those witnesses, the framers. The second parak discusses people going to exile, Galut, which we know we touched upon that in the beginning of the first parak, where we said that if some witnesses want to frame somebody, if they frame someone in Galut, they wanted to obligate someone to exile, they were found to be framers, we don't send them to exile. Rather, we will go ahead and we give them lashes. And that was what we said regarding framing, regarding exile. So now the second parak, yes. Galut is Ir Miklat, is cities of refuge. And now the Gemara is going to explain who are the people that do go to Galut. Who are the people that go to, and also who are the people that go to exile? Yes. Right. So Galut means, so let's explain this a little bit. Galut, exile means that you're exiled from your home. You need to leave your home. And the way the Sefer Chinuch explained very eloquently how a person who killed someone, who killed someone, even though he killed someone inadvertently, but a terrible thing happened to him, that a Jewish person was killed, and he needs a lot of kapara. The person who kills someone, someone who kills someone unintentionally needs a lot of kapara, needs a lot of atonement, and part of the atonement is by going into exile, leaving one's comfort of one's home, one's friends, one's birthplace, so to speak. Many times in the old days, it was their birthplace. When you leave your home, people lived in the same place where they were born for many, many years. Good morning, Mr. Haber. And going into exile, you could talk to the Shah of Iran, talk to his exile. What was that like going into exile? I mean, he's not around anymore. But the point is, it's like a death of some sort. When a person has to go to exile, he's missing out on life, so to speak. His life, his normalcy of life that he had until now, of being with his friends, with his family, now he's gone. And we don't know how long. It's an undetermined amount of time that he could be in exile. It all depends until the Kohen Gadol passed away. It could be 50 years, it could be a year, it could be 30 days. Depends how long the Kohen Gadol will live. And the commentaries discuss what's the connection between the death of the Kohen Gadol and this person, that why should his exile be connected directly to the how long the Kohen Gadol lives. One idea, one of the we've shown him, I found very interesting, is that the people look at the Kohen Gadol in a certain sense as responsible for the peace of the community. And if somebody killed somebody and he's roaming the streets, it would be looked at the Kohen Gadol. How do you allow somebody that, under your, so to speak, ruleship, this person murdered someone, even though it was inadvertent, he doesn't belong to be in the streets, living like everybody in the normal state, like everybody else. So as long as the Kohen Gadol is around, that the act of murder happened under his watch, so he can't have such a person roaming the streets. But once that Kohen Gadol passed away, then now it's a new Kohen Gadol going to be inducted as the Kohen Gadol. So now it's not going to be looked at as a criticism in a certain sense of the Kohen Gadol. Why is this guy roaming the streets? This happened under but it didn't happen under this guy. It happened under the previous Kohen Gadol. That's one idea that's given of what's the connection. Why is it until the Kohen Gadol passes away does he have to stay in so to speak? He's jailed. He's like jail. He's in jail in a certain sense. The jail is a different type of jail. He has to live in a certain place. There are 6 cities plus 42 cities. There's 48 cities of refuge, so to speak, that are available for him to live. But he has to live in those places. If he leaves those cities, the Goladam, the close brother, has the right to avenge the blood and kill him. So he's like he's under city arrest, so to speak. Yes, Daniel. Oh, very good. Very good.
His whole life is gone.
Very good.
40 years stuck in this place. And even if the person's has passed away, he's still stuck there.
Right. So Daniel of Shalom is asking, but how is it fair if, let's say, the murder happens at there's a young Kohen Gadol, and the guy with a young Kohen Gadol, and the murder happened, the guy might say, what? He has to go. It's a mitzvah. He has to go to our mikvah. The Sefer Chinuch says he has a mitzvah to run to our mikvah. It's a mitzvah on the court, the Bezdin, the Sanhedrin. The court has to send him to Ari Miklat. He can't be in society. He can't. The guy who killed someone inadvertently, b'shogeg. Now there are going to be certain circumstances the Gemara is going to explain. That's it. That's an ones. But let's explain, Daniel. The murder that we're talking, the murder that happened was there was some level of negligence, meaning to go to exile if it was a total accident that he had no way of preventing. He will not go to exile. Let's clarify that. The only time to go to exile, now if it was a lot of negligence, he also won't. The two extremes. Total accident, he won't go to exile. And if he was very negligent, he also won't go to exile. Is not enough. So the exile is to be an atonement, it has to be right in the middle. A little bit of negligence, not so much negligence, and that was an accident, but it could have done a little bit more. It could have been more on top of his game. He was going down the ladder. He was walking down the ladder. You have to be extra careful. And if you're extra careful, you will not fall. But he wasn't that level of careful that he should have been. So he's not totally negligent. He's not negligent. It's a little bit. That's the case. I mean, those cities were cities of Leviim. These are cities of Leviim. These are 6. All the cities of Leviim live in these cities. So now, and the reason, and it makes a lot of sense. Why the Leviim? Because Leviim were the people that they were supposed to be the rabbis of the community. They were supposed to be the teachers of Torah. The Leviim did not work the fields. They were in the Beis Hamikdash. They were teaching Torah. So they were supposed to be the role models. That's the rehab. You go hang out with the rabbis, and the rabbis will tell you how important life is, how important it is to be, not to hurt someone, and so on and so forth. And they will teach them properly. Then the question would be, would they have to pay rent? Because it says the 6 cities that were designated, they don't pay rent-free. The other 42 cities of the Levium, if you go to the other 42 cities, they gotta pay rent. But so there's certain difference between these 42 cities and the other 6 cities. But just to answer your question, Daniel, one of the commentaries say the following: Hashem, in his great wisdom, figures everything out, that the Kohen Gadol should die at the exact, everything should come in there, should plan that it should be the exact right amount of time that the guy should be in sentence. So therefore, there's a master plan about the life, for the life of the Kohen Gadol, and all the people that killed inadvertently are going to be directly connected, their future, to how long the Kohen Gadol lives. So Hashem is going to figure out when should the Kohen Gadol when should this accident happen or something? And when should the Kohen Gadol pass away in order to that it should be the proper exact atonement for this guy? Yes. Oh, so that's what Michael says. So you know what? The people are going to pray. All the people in jail are going to pray for the Kohen Gadol to die. So what they did was the mother of the Kohen Gadol would bake cakes. She would bake cakes and bring it to these guys in jail. That they shouldn't pray for the Kohen Gadol to die. We'll see about it. How do you like that, Mr. Haber? Fascinating or what? They didn't want their kids to pray for whatever. We'll see what was done to help keep them in. And also, listen, if they're in the cities of the Levium, hopefully they'll teach them not to pray for someone to die, right? Not to pray for the Kohen Gadol to die. Right. Yes. We have to see more about it, but meaning in general speaking, land, meaning the point like this, land, usually if you want to live in a certain house, you have to pay rent. But here, this land belongs to them, so to speak. This land, they come in, this land, they have a right to this land, they have a right to stay here. We have to see more details exactly, but this land belongs to these 6 cities, meaning they have rights to live there, but they don't have to pay anything. They have to give them space. And the Levim that are living in those 6 cities have to accommodate these, these guys.
Rabbi, the same funds that supported the Leviim also supported the Arei Miklat portion where the runaways had to go.
It's a good question, Jaime, because the only thing we at this moment we know is that they had a place. I would think there was a house for them. More than that, we have to look at more details exactly. But they had a place to put let's say a shelter for them to stay. That's what I would think. We'll have to look into more of it. Yes. Oh, good morning. See, one of the reasons, like the way we're explaining from Ariel, maybe there's 2 points. Ariel, Yaron is bringing up. Going into exile, in a certain sense, will be an atonement. That's what the main thing of exile is. The guy who killed someone unintentionally, he needs kapara. He needs atonement. It also is a safe haven from him. There's an idea that I saw also in the Sefer Chinuch, a beautiful idea, that if a person killed someone unintentionally, the family is very hurt, obviously, from such a thing. And if the family will see the guy roaming the streets, the one who killed their relative, it will cause great bad feelings for those family members to see. So the exile also serves, Dr. Navid, as a certain calms the situation. It calms the feelings of the situation. And not that the guy who just killed their relative is walking around the street, they see him, it could create many fights and many problems and many other things. So that also another byproduct of this process of going into exile for murdering someone. There's always many, every mitzvah has many positive dividends that come out as a result of the mitzvah. Okay, now the Mishnah needs to explain, we're on the Mishnah on Zayin Amar Aleph. So in the art scroll, it's 7A5. Elohein HaGolim. These are the people that go to exile. You should know there were many great rabbis that put themselves into exile. Many great rabbis that were leaders of communities in Europe. They felt they wanted atonement. Maybe more Hasidic rabbis did this. Maybe it was more common you hear about. They wanted atonement. They wanted to humble themselves. So how do you humble yourself? They left their city They would go, what's the right word? Incognito, is that the right word? You would not know who they are. They would go to towns. They would sleep with everybody else, where everybody else slept, where the guests slept, whether it was a town shul area or whatever it was. And that they felt was an atonement for them, because they left their comforts of their home. They went to these places. They were like everybody else. They had nothing. They had no, and therefore there was a humbling experience, and they felt that they needed that humbling experience. That was it. That was a self-proclaimed exile that they did. But here we're talking about an exile, like I mentioned to Michael before, that the Torah mandates that this murderer who killed Anatesi must go to exile. He has a mitzvah. The courts have a mitzvah to make sure that to send them to exile. Now the mission needs to explain. Now there's specific technical situations when a person goes to exile by killing someone. It's not just, okay, as long as it was not intentional, he goes to exile. No, there are many details, and that's what this parak is going to focus on, the details of what the circumstances are that a person will go into exile. Eluhain Hagolim. These are the cases of Hahoreg Nefesh B'Shvaga. These are the cases that a person goes to Golus, Hahoreg Nefesh B'Shvaga. A person who goes ahead and kills someone B'Shogeg. B'Shogeg is that means unintentionally. And now we're going to explain some details. Haya Ma'agel B'Magila. A person was standing on top of his roof. And let's say he had, the way Rashi explains, the roof, let's say we're talking about a flat roof. And the flat roof, you wanted to make an angle slopey so the rain should fall off make a little angle so the rain should fall off the roof. So you would go ahead and you would you would have some plaster, and you would have some sort of tool, and you would push you would angle it, and you would slope it in a way that the rain should fall off the roof, and you would use this wooden utensil, and you would push it. Let's say you would push it down. You push this utensil down to create this slopey thing. And now, what is it called? And then what happened was, when you were pushing it, and you know what happened? It fell out of your hand, this tool. While you were pushing down, so you're pushing down and up to make this curve, so to speak, this angle. And what'd you say? Pitch. And what happened was, it fell out of your hands while you were going down, and there was someone underneath, and the guy got killed. So that's a case that he'll go to exile for that case. And it fell from his hands, and it fell on the guy that was underneath. Or you had a barrel, and you had a barrel that was tied with a rope, and you wanted to take this barrel from the roof to the ground. You want to lower down the barrel from the roof to the ground. And what happened was, it's tied with this rope, this barrel, and the rope fell. So usually you lower it down very gently. But what happened was, you dropped it. And so what happened? Let's say I have a barrel, and the barrel is tied with a rope. So I was supposed to lower it down gently with the rope to lower the barrel down. But instead of gently lowering the barrel down with the rope, the whole thing fell. The rope fell out of my hand. The barrel fell down while I was lowering it down, and boom, it killed somebody. Veragoto, and it killed somebody. Hayayored basulam, or a guy was going down a ladder. It's a very common case. A guy's going down a ladder, and what happened was, he slipped while he was going down the ladder. He fell, and it hit somebody underneath, V'nafa love, he fell on somebody underneath. Remember, if a person, even if a person would fall on a child, also would go to exile for killing the child inadvertently. So it could be someone underneath that's not of great weight that he falls on. Also depends on the height, obviously. But if he killed that person, v'nafa alav argos, all these three cases of the Mishnah, hari zegoleh, they go to exile. Now, Tosfos explains why does the Mishnah give these three cases? The Mishnah is not like a peddler. Peddler, like the Gemara says sometimes, are we a peddler? Peddler tells you I have this thing to sell, that thing to sell. It tells you all those different wares, all those different items that he needs to sell. I have a few things on my, you want to buy this, you want to buy that, you want to buy that. The Mishnah doesn't tell us many cases unless each case is something unique that I would not, if the Mishnah could tell us, if he could tell us in one case, you wouldn't tell us three cases, right, Mr. Haber? So therefore, every case has something new to teach us. So let's look at the bottom Tosfot. Yoreid b'sulam. If anyone have the bottom Tosfot, the headline of the Tosfot is right over here. Yoreid b'sulam. See, it's in bold, dark. What's it? Very good. So all these three cases, they're in the downward motion. These three cases are all downward motion, and that's the case of the Torah. The Torah, when the Torah says a guy goes to exile, the case of the Torah is when you're going on the downward motion. And the way the Rambam explains, just to explain your point,
whether it's downward or upward.
so we're going to say that if it's upwards, downwards, you're going against gravity. When you go do something down, you're going against gravity, and because you're going against gravity, the Rambam says, Maimonides says, you need to be extra careful. But when you go upwards, when you're not going, when you're going upwards, when you're going down, the gravity is pushing you down. Correct? When you're going down, that's why it's always easier to walk down steps than to go up steps, right? So since it's easy, but when you're on a ladder and you're going down, or something is you're lowering something down, there's a force that's pulling it down. So when you know there's a force that's pulling something down, that requires you to be extra careful. And if you weren't extra careful and you fell, and the person fell down the ladder, that's where the Torah says, and someone got killed underneath, the Torah says you got to go to exile for that. But if you're going up a ladder, where it's not, where you don't have to be that level of carefulness as you need to be when you're going down the ladder, it's very rare that you should fall down because there's nothing pulling. It's more common that you just take one step at a time. There's nothing, you're not going against the force of gravity. So there, if you fall, that's a real accident. That's what the Rambam says. Walking up the ladder is and you fall is something above a pella, something so unexpected. And therefore, if it happened, we're not going to send you to exile for that, Ariel. But if a guy is going down the ladder, where the danger is more common, and you need to be more on top of your game, and you weren't on top of your game, that's considered a level of negligence. That's how the Rambam explains the.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes.
So much time is spent on what happens if this, what happens that. How come there were no time spent on precautions, like if you're on a roof to put mark the space below so that no one should walk by?
Very good. So we do have a special mitzvah in the Torah called Vasisa Magil Gagecha. We have a special mitzvah in the Torah that you have to put a gate on a roof that no one should fall. You shouldn't fall. That no one should fall off the roof. Now we have to look at the details of that halacha. For sure, any roof that's used on a regular basis, for sure, is biblically mandated. It's biblically mandated to have a gate. You can't have a roof that you use like in Israel. Everyone they sleep on the roof for sukkahs. They in the old days they would put fruits on the roof to ripen. The Torah mandates, Jaime, that's a special mitzvah, like you're saying, to take precaution. Because a guy falls from the roof, not only he can get himself killed, he can kill someone else. So the Torah says about those halachot. The Torah also says halacha of nishmatim olden afshasechem. You have to do things of precaution. And also from the case of the law of making a gate for your roof would also should teach us how we need to take precautions that nobody should get hurt. Whether it's
implied from there that you should take precautions at the bottom of the building or the roof or below the ladder to prevent accidental death.
Right, to prevent damage. Exactly. That should apply from that, because we don't want anyone to get hurt. And the pasuk, if a person gets hurt, it's his responsibility in a certain sense for causing that.
There's a degree of negligence not to mark at the bottom of the roof or the ladder that people shouldn't walk by, because in case something would fall off.
Right, exactly. People, right. But people, that's why people, it bothers me. I'll tell you like this. I used to pass by a certain pizza shop. I'm not going to say in a certain neighborhood. And they always left the door, the basement door going down to the basement open with no yellow thing in front of it. Now, first of all, I don't know that a yellow thing is enough. If a person if you have a basement of a store, right? And the people get deliveries outside the store and they lower it down to the basement, right? And there's a hole in the ground. People could fall into that hole. So what do people do? They put a yellow thing, danger, correct? Everyone knows what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I was very upset with this pizza shop. Every time I would go to the pizza shop, almost all the time, they did not have it. Every time I went in, they knew me. The rabbi's here.
Rabbi,
yes.
Kosher.
Say that again?
Kosher.
I can't, did it come out clear, Jaime?
A kosher pizza place or unkosher pizza place?
It was unkosher because of this, so to speak. That's what I would say. Good morning, Mr. Good. If the pizza shop is not careful and they leave a space that people could fall down, that's not a kosher act. But so I every time I came into the pizza shop, I said something. But the real question is, I wonder, halacha, is it enough? Is it enough to have to put a caution sign? Is that enough of a law just to put a precaution, the yellow sign in the ground? No. Really, you're supposed to make a certain fence of protection. That's what we have to look up the halacha to make sure nobody falls. A little precaution sign, a little yellow sign might not be enough. A kid could go by over there. It's a halacha question. But the point is, we see the precedent that the Torah says we have to do things to protect that no one should get hurt. You have to make a fence on your roof. And it's not that because we're going to get a fine that the government, the Department of Consumer, whatever, is going to give us a fine, and that's how we have to do something. The Torah mandates us to do that. Also, it's interesting, the rabbis created certain laws of protection. Also, interesting, the rabbis say you can't put money in certain things. Someone shouldn't get hurt themselves. You can't put money in your mouth. The rabbi said you can't put coins in your mouth because the coins could be diseased. The coins are diseased. You don't know who handled the coins, and therefore, as a result of that, you can get hurt. So yes, the Torah is obligating us not to cause damage to somebody else. Okay, so let's look at the bottom Tosfos. Mr. God, we're very happy to see you. The bottom Tosfos. Harayore b'sulam. Yesh omrim. Everyone have the Tosfos? Harayore b'sulam. Who's going down the ladder? Yesh omrim detana lozu avzuktana. The Mishnah is telling us the Chidush is not only case 1, I'm teaching you even case 2, and then even case 3. Each subsequent case is a new Chidush. One case is more novel than the other. First, I tell you the small Chidush, the small idea. Then I tell you even something even greater that you would not know. Then I tell you even the third thing even greater than that. So Rashi says, Lo zu ma'agel, Tosfos says, not only ma'agel, the guy who's taking the stick and he's smoothing out his roof. He wants to create a little angle slope so the rain can come off the roof. you should obligate him exile if the tool fell out of his hand and killed someone below the roof. The lamalon is out. Why wasn't he more careful? He allowed the tool that he's moving on the roof. You have to be more careful. You weren't more careful. You got to go, and someone gets killed. You got to go to exile. You got to go to Golut. You're going to go Ari Miklat, and you're going to stay there until the Kohen Gadol pass away. But even when the guy is lowering a barrel, now what do I got in my barrel? I got some good wine or other things in my barrel that I'm lowering down. I'm definitely going to be careful because I don't want my barrel to break. I don't want to lose I'm holding the barrel with this string. I'm going to be very careful. So I'm very careful. So still the chiddush is, even though most probably I was a certain amount careful, but if I dropped it, I'm still obligated. We don't consider it like most probably some real accident that I could not have prevented. We look at that also as negligence. If you're lowering a barrel, you have total control and you know you're going against gravity. You know you have to be strong and careful. You know it could fall. And if you didn't, and if you weren't on top of your game, you're going to have to go to exile if someone gets killed as a result of you dropping this. And if you're not confident that you could do it, then you don't do it. You don't take empty half the contents of the barrel. So do a lesser weight. Obviously, the more weight you have in the barrel, the harder it is for you to have control. So therefore, it's a certain level of negligence, not total negligence. Therefore, he has to go to exile. But now we have the third chiddush. The guy is going down a ladder. When a guy is going down a ladder, you could bet. We don't like betting. You can know that he's definitely going to be careful because he doesn't want to fall. Because if he falls down the ladder, he himself would get definitely injured and hurt. So you might have thought if he falls down the ladder and he kills somebody, he should not be obligated because you will say most probably it's a real accident that happened and it's not real negligence. That's why there's a chiddush is that even if a guy falls down the ladder, going down the ladder, but you should have been, you have to be extra careful. And if you kill someone by falling down the ladder, you have to go into exile. So I want to wish everyone, want to say something? Okay, so sometimes that's a good, but sometimes the Mishnah likes to do it in this fashion. Loads do absolutely. Not only the small chiddush, even the bigger chiddush. Have a great day, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow. Amen. Amen. Amen.
This is about most of the Torah. The day was about
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Sure, I have all time. So that's why Very good.
Thank you, everybody. How are you?
Baruch Hashem. Have a great day, everybody.